Welcome to Vision Plus, a program featuring a positive outlook, dealing with everyday situations of marriage, children, and business. Believing Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. Teacher, author, speaker, delighting audiences from New York to Sacramento with a heart and message for the people today. Bonnie would like to remind you of the 800 number on the screen. Please feel free to call at any time throughout the broadcast and share your concerns. Leave your prayer request, and someone will pray with you. And now, teacher, author, and speaker, Bonnie.
We have something that I know maybe the young people, but I can tell you for sure that mothers and grandmothers would like to have this information and learn about this testimony. It's about possibly how you can pray through till your child or grandchild gets off drugs, or you yourself, drugs or alcohol or some kind of abuse. I saw last week on another television channel that there are 39 million pounds of cocaine that they brought in just from Mexico last week. So we know if there's a $39 million worth, it might be economic downturn. But when it comes to people that are taking whatever it is, whether it's truly illicit drugs, or it could just be maybe drugs that are painkillers that are actually you get from the doctor, or you go into your grandmother's chest, in her medicine chest, and get some things out of there that shouldn't be gotten out of there. Well, we are so concerned about that, and there's young people that come from really horrible homes, that their dad was a drug addict or an alcoholic, and the child says, well, what do you expect? My dad was an alcoholic. Or what do you expect? My dad was a drug addict, or a mom was. But I tell you what, if to me, the most difficult people are ones that you can't figure out that they live in a great community. They have a wonderful church they're exposed to, and actually their mom and dad are really pretty good people, and that's what I want you to meet today. And you've met this person's mother, because she came and talked about several things. One thing was what to do if your spouse passes, and her spouse did die, and how she handled that. Well, this is now her daughter. This is Amanda Muller Patterson. Amanda goes to the church over there that I have no clue, because I know it's Victory. Victory Baptist. That's right. What did I do with my sheet of paper to have the wonderful information? You know everybody that I need that help. Well, I guess I ate it because I don't see it anywhere, but she'll tell us all about it. Victory Baptist Church in Gunnersville, Alabama. And for some of you that are going to hear she did it, I know our editor, Thaddeus, you will want to get this. Amanda Muller-Patterson. She was a Muller and married Patterson. And her phone number, we'll give you that to you before the end of the program, from Victory Baptist Church, Gunnersville, Alabama. But she wasn't always at that church, and she wasn't always what you're going to find out today. She's gone through her hills and valleys, as it seems like when you read in the Old Testament and the New Testament too, where it says that there are people that are really just love the Lord with all their heart, and then their child may not. And then their grandchild may come back again. So it's really interesting how that happens. And the drug addicts, there's a lot of resources. We hope to get to some of that. But now we have a confession of a former teenage drug addict. But we're going to start in her adult life, because something incredible happened. And that is in her testimony. That is the night she said Well, why don't you tell your story of what
Okay.
happened that night?
Well, my father had just had his stroke. So I was at a point where I was really feeling like maybe my life had gone the wrong direction. I wondered why this had happened to my father, and I had kind of been drinking. It wasn't like hard liquor, it was just wine, but still, it was drinking. And I came to a point where, I would every night maybe have a drink to kind of cope with the situation because I felt that I had no coping mechanisms. And I was laying in bed and just in torment, thinking about my relationship with God and how I had disappointed Him. And it was in the wee hours of the morning, and I got up and I walked around to a picture window that looked out to the sky, and I could see the stars. And in my heart, I just whispered a prayer. I said, God, if I really matter to you, will you just drop a falling star? And at that moment, He did. And I can remember feeling like He loves me. He really loves me. He cares about me in a personal way, that He would take something from His creation and just at that moment show me that I mattered. So it was an amazing experience, and it was a turning point in my life.
Turning point. And that was such a need that you had, this turning point.
Absolutely.
Because as a teenager, you had experimented with wild and crazy drugs and
Yeah.
people that take those. Tell us about those teenage years.
Well, I think what it really started out as is that I had found myself not happy with who I was. I couldn't really find my place in this world. Being a teenager is really hard because you have lots of distractions. There are people who can lead you in all types of wrong directions. But I got in with the wrong crowd. I think what really gave in to me falling into drugs was I had a relationship with a boy where I gave in to sexual sin, and I hated myself, and I was overcome with guilt. So I started using drugs to forget that. And I feel that a lot of young girls do not know their self-worth, and that might be the root of everything when they fall into temptation and they don't understand why they're feeling these ways, because the world tells kids nowadays that it's okay, just do whatever feels good. There's no guilt, there's no nothing, just be what you want to be at the moment and not even think about what the repercussions will be later. I think that is the biggest mistake, that our society has led our kids into a false hope. That life is just going to be okay if they do what they feel for the moment. And I had started using prescription drugs at first. I think I had gotten injured, and somebody at school had made me aware that the pain medicine that they had given me was something that could also, I remember taking it and feeling kind of weird, but I didn't know really that it was something that you could get high off of or that would make you forget. And I think that when I found that out by word of mouth at school, that's all it took. And I don't think people had ever really gave me the severity of prescription drugs, because in my mind I thought, well, it comes from a doctor, it's got to be okay, right?
Of course.
Yeah. So it was not that way at all. It led to me taking many steps in the wrong direction. And
what were some of those steps you took, Amanda?
well, the ones that I think were the worst was that I started using marijuana, which, most kids nowadays think it's just like a cigarette. It's nothing. It's culturally acceptable because you see things on TV where people are laughing about it, and that it was just kind of like a funny ha-ha drug, but it takes and robs you of who you are. you will become just, it's almost like it takes your inhibition away. You don't care what you do. And you find yourself thinking about maybe the previous day, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I just did that. But then maybe you will do some more drugs to forget about what you just did. So it takes away your conscience.
Where do the teenagers get those drugs?
Mostly from other teenagers, other people at school. Everybody I knew that used drugs had some person that they, either an older young adult kind of thing, like maybe in their 21 area, or maybe it was just somebody that was in the school that had a lot of money. Usually money and drugs go together.
They had a lot of money after they were selling the drugs, not that they came from a really wealthy family.
No.
They came from a wealthy family?
Some of them came from wealthy families.
And did your parents suspect anything?
Not for a long time. I played the masquerade. I'd put my mask on and come home and just be like, I was out with my friends, but deep inside I knew what I was doing was wrong, but I couldn't stop. Not on my own power.
Well, what were some of the kinds of drugs that teenagers like yourself were getting into, in addition to the prescription drugs and the drinking?
And the marijuana. Well, later it became, I'd always, my mom would warn me, but of course by then it was too late. I had already, she would tell me, that marijuana is just a stepping stone, and that you will find yourself later getting into harder drugs. And I just would slough it off and laugh about it. But later I did come to a point where crystal meth had come across my lips. And I remember God really, even though, I was like a prodigal. I had given my life to the Lord at an early age, but not really, It was like when I became a teenager, I went my own way. And in Matthew 15:11, the story of the prodigal son, talks about how he wanted his inheritance and he wanted to go off and live the way he wanted to. And I felt like that's what I did. I thought, Lord, what you have in store for me is not right. I'm going to do it my way. And it ended up to years of heartache. Just parts where I would find myself so far away from him that I didn't even know how I got there. And it was really heartbreaking because I didn't know how to get back.
When you say you were so far away, how did you know, and what were some of your reactions, the symptoms and so forth of people that are on drugs?
Okay.
And for you specifically?
Well, the symptoms that I had that I think that came from the drug abuse was I was withdrawn. I didn't want to be with my family. I would maybe, if I was at home, I would hide in my room because either in there I was using or getting ready to go somewhere and use. And it wasn't like I had an intravenous needle and I was shooting up in my room, but it wasn't any different. It was still a drug, and it was stealing who I was. And I think that I would pull myself away from maybe the friends that were good influences in my life. And I did not want to go to church because I felt under conviction when I went there. And it came to a point where, I stole from my family, stole from people I knew, whether it be that they had some medicine in their cabinet or something, or something to buy drugs. I stole. And when I started looking at myself, like, how can you be doing this? What's wrong with you?
You would steal like items around the house or something. And how did you find a place to sell those?
At the pawn shop. It was as easy as that. And I think a lot of teenagers and people who are on drugs they'll find an avenue, either through somebody that they know that is selling the drugs will buy that, or kind of like barter, with them. And it's just a horribly miserable life. And
Would you eat regular meals? Did you lose a lot of weight? Because symptoms sometimes are losing a lot of weight.
With the marijuana use, it was more, you heard the munchies, people who have used marijuana, they feel like they got to go and eat, or kind of.
Do they gain some weight then? Sometimes?
Maybe sometimes, but if
But
you're,
they want to eat
that's
a
a
lot.
depressant. So yes, it will kind of depress your system, and maybe sometimes you will gain weight. But if you use something like crystal meth or some kind of stimulant, you lose weight. And I think the biggest thing, the indications that you can have for a child who you may have some questions about, are they on drugs, is if you talk to them and they avert their eyes, or they just don't want to have a conversation with you about something like that.
And what are some other symptoms, or so that people will know maybe my child is on drugs or maybe my friend is? And like your good friends that you stayed away from and you wanted to stay with your other friends, did they say anything to you about what was going on with you?
Well, I mean, I did have some people that were concerned, but most of the time they didn't want to confront the issue. I think when it's a teenager, they're afraid, that maybe how you'll receive it, or maybe they don't know how to approach it. And I think the thing about it is if somebody was sick, like had the flu or a serious life-threatening illness, that person could not get up on their own. They would need somebody to carry them to the doctor. And that's the way it is when somebody's got a drug addiction. They need somebody to stand in the gap for them and make sure that they're fighting for them, because that person doesn't have the will to at the time.
Well, let's just recap. If someone suspects that maybe their child or grandchild or friend is on drugs, they want to stay in their room a lot.
Yeah, stay in their room. They isolate themselves from people maybe that they were hanging out before.
Don't want to go to church.
Don't want to go to church.
What are some of the other things?
Maybe spending money and not knowing where it's going.
I see.
Say you gave
Do they
the child.
sometimes have a job, maybe?
Yes,
and yet
I had a job.
You did?
Mm-hmm.
And how did you function at your job?
It would be that most of the people that I worked with were doing the same thing I was.
I heard that about one of the stores where that even the managers were doing. In fact, they were getting the workers, the young people, getting them drugs for.
It was.
They ended up a month without too much month at the end of the money.
Yeah.
And so you would actually steal maybe from parents or grandparents or friends.
It would. I usually wouldn't go, and steal from people who were like not people that I didn't know. It was mostly
people you knew.
People I knew.
That's so amazing.
Yeah.
And did your parents or anyone ever say, you know what? I had a vase, I had an iPad, an iPod, or something.
There was a moment or two where I was asked by my mother,
what would she ask you? Where something was?
Yes, and
what kind of thing was it?
Like an electronic thing.
Yeah.
But I had.
Because that's probably the easiest to sell.
And also gold. Any kind of jewelry would be a terrible thing to be lying around.
Yeah, because that would easily slip into your pocket and down to the pawn shop.
But I think the worst thing about it is that prescription drugs was the avenue for me. Because, if you have something like that lying around your house, it needs to be put up or disposed of. Because that is, the easiest thing that kids can get a hold of. And that they can abuse. And there was a time, I think I heard a statistic on the television talking about kids in middle school that were going to pill parties and just taking what was out of their parents' cabinet and bringing it to a party, and everybody would dump it in a bowl and they would just eat it like a candy bar, like just pop it in their mouth. And the repercussions of that are kids will end up dead because what are they ingesting? They have no idea, you know, and it just floors me that
And that was middle school.
middle
Yes,
school.
I did read that. I did hear that on television. And it just seemed so far-fetched. I thought, well, that's got to be the
No,
Chicago,
no.
New York, ghetto or something. Not real people are doing
Right.
that.
And I think that the problem is that it's in so many homes that you don't realize it.
How do you know that? I mean, how could one know that? That it's in homes that you don't really suspect or know.
Well, the, like I said, the warning signs, you know, mostly it's where the kids hang out, where they're going. If they're not, you know, parents, I think sometimes don't stay involved enough in what the kids are doing. They give them, like, my parents said they trusted me, and they really did, but I lied to them. And I really just took advantage of their trust. And
were you driving at the time?
absolutely, yeah.
And you were driving high?
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Many times that I
did. Did you have any near accidents or scary situation? Why do you think that?
Because God was protecting me and the other people. Absolutely. If I would have had an incident where I would have taken somebody's life, you know, I'm so thankful that God was in control during those times.
Well, your mother and dad, I guess your dad trusted you also. He did never suspect you or the people you were with? Or they saw that you're changing
they did
groups?
See, and there were some times where my parents tried to intervene. Okay, let me get that clear that they did try to help. There were some, as I got older, like after maybe I had graduated high school, it became more prevalent to see. You know, those first few years is hard because maybe it's just every other weekend, or maybe it was just, you know, a few times a month. But it still was a stepping stone for later on.
What about who you married? You married? You're still married to the same husband,
Yes,
aren't you?
I am.
And had children, and then tell me some things were going on then.
Okay, well, my husband and I were both lost as could be in the world. He had never had a relationship with Jesus Christ. Like I said, I was a prodigal. I had left and said, I want to do things my way. But God brought us together, and the amazing thing about that is that He has done amazing things in our lives. He has restored us. You know, there was a moment where I know my parents were praying for the situation. I became pregnant with my first child, and I think God did that because He knew I didn't feel like I was worth enough to stop, but I felt like a child was. I knew that the child inside me, I did not want to have drugs come into their system, so I stopped what I was doing.
You could stop?
I did.
How did you stop? I've heard people say.
I stopped using for my son, but it
while
was
you
still,
were pregnant, but it was still what?
in the back of my mind.
You were still desiring it.
Oh, absolutely.
Like how often?
Daily. I would think about it all the time. It would be something that would come into my mind, and I would be like, no, you know, I cannot do that. I have a child inside me, and I don't want to damage him. And, you know, my husband actually came to know the Lord in a jail cell.
How did that come about?
Well, when we this is amazing that when we had come to the point where we were realized that we were pregnant, we were going to have a child together. He had so many things from his past that he wanted to start doing things right, and he had got a job, but when he went down to get his ID, all the warrants had come up, and they came and they took him to jail. And
When he applied for the job,
when he went to get his license, yeah,
like driver's license.
driver's license, because he did not
And
have it.
What warrants were what for?
Drugs, yeah, they were for drugs. And
So the police knew he was taking drugs and doing drugs.
well, yeah, but you can, they can only do so much. If you're not going to come and you're going to hide from the police or do things like that, then you can outrun it until there comes a time where you have to, fess up and stand on what you, what pay for what you did. And he actually had gotten taken to jail somewhere in Birmingham, and a prison ministry had come in.
Really?
Yeah, prison
Oh,
ministry.
that's so exciting to know that
Yeah.
prison ministry. Because I go over to the Limestone prison sometimes and work with the guys, and you wonder if anybody's
yeah.
ever helped, or they
Well,
just looking you at with glassy eyes
yeah.
and nothing's happening. So
Well,
you really were touched.
Yeah, he gave his life to Christ there, and that moment he's never used a drug since.
Oh, how exciting. And
It
you're
is
going to have to
amazing.
wait till next week to hear the rest of the story. We're talking with Amanda Muller Patterson from Victory Baptist Church of Gunnersville. Now, you got to find out how that all came together, and you'll get to do that next week when she tells a little bit more about Jeremy and Amanda Patterson, Associate Youth Pastor, pastor and youth pastor at Victory Baptist Church. You got to find out about that name too. So if you want to know more about how you can get off of drugs, how your child or grandchild can get off of drugs, this is an opportunity. We do want to tell you that I have quite a bit of literature here for you that I will send to you, and it will come. Tony, bring that over here. It will come to you at no charge to you if you just call that toll-free number, whether this is on YouTube or on the internet where we do video streaming, or if it's the DVD. I just want you to know that we do have some numbers, some material that we can get to help you. So we will see Amanda Muller Patterson next week. Again at 8 o'clock on Saturday night, when you just may be flipping through your computer and there she is, Channel 3. And I do want to say that is, we have a new sponsor, and I want you to say that makeup by Mary Khalil of Derma Enhancement in Huntsville, Alabama at 256-533-2424. And Amanda, give us your phone number again of the church.
Okay, it's 256-582-5054, and that is Victory Baptist Church of Gunnersville.
That's 5054 in Gunnersville, Alabama, 582. And we're happy that you joined us and that Tony took time out of his busy schedule. He's working on an invention he's going to get done, and we're mostly happy that you joined us. And thank you for doing that, and bless your heart for watching.